Hello, and welcome to this special CBTV interview with Lynn B. Thurgood, president of Oxford Wealth Advisors in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. Lynn B., as he's commonly referred to, is a chartered life underwriter and one of New Mexico's only certified annuity specialists, who since 1987 has specialized in working with retirees and pre-retirees. In addition, he is the president of Central New Mexico's Society of Financial Awareness, also known as SOFA. Lynn B., welcome back to Checks and Balances TV.
Thank you, Matt. Good to be here. Good
to have you here again. We had a great round the first time and wanted to have you come back on and talk about another very important topic for Americans to know and learn about.
Absolutely.
So good to have you here. And that is that many Americans today, through their employers, have some kind of retirement plan. It could be a 401k, it could be a 403b. If they work for the state, it could be a 457 plan. But tell our viewers, what are some of the options that they have with these retirement accounts once they retire from their former employer or from the state?
Well, basically, I think, Matt, we have two options. They can leave the money with that custodian and be subject to the controls and the options that are available to them with that custodian, or they can roll it over tax-free into their own IRA account that they now have control of.
Okay, so choice is pretty simple. You can go left or you can go right. Left, so to speak, is you can leave it in the account where it's at with the employer.
Right.
Or you can, an important point you said, roll it over tax-free, so there's no taxes on the rollover into an IRA or individual retirement account. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. And that's a very important option that people need to understand.
Okay, all right. Well, let's talk about that then. Do you recommend for the majority of your clients that they roll it over into an individual retirement account? And if so, why?
Well, we generally do recommend that because of the control aspect. We've seen times where folks have left assets behind with an employer and that employer's gone bankrupt. Or other issues like this where the options within the plan are just too risky. And so, yes, we think it's very important that people understand the importance of their options and make a good educated decision on taking control of those assets and then opening up themselves to the options that are available in the entire universe versus just what they have with that particular custodian who may or may not be there 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Boy, that's a big consideration. You know, an American, an employee could have worked for a company for 40 years and thinking they'll be around here for another 40 or 50 or 100 years, and something happens, the company folds, downsizes, goes bankrupt, whatever, and their entire nest egg can literally disappear, can it?
Yeah, it can, and we've seen that happen. We've seen folks come in to see us that have had stock, company stock, loyal company people. I mean, they were raised that way. This generation of retirees are very loyal, and they're very committed to their company. And unfortunately, some of them have been hurt because of that loyalty.
You think about companies like Enron, and there's just a number of them that come to mind.
That's right.
That this happened to, and they lost everything. So rolling it over into an IRA, individual retirement account, will give them, what would you say, more options and perhaps even lower fees than where the 401k or 457 plan might have been?
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of folks have the mistaken impression that the 401k plan has no fees associated with it, and of course we know that that's not the case. And that disclosure is provided them, but unfortunately a lot of the folks have never read their documents, their plan documents, nor have they read their prospectuses.
Right.
We tend to think that if it takes 80 to 100 pages to explain an investment, it might be a little red flag to say, as we say in New Mexico, cuidado, caution, be careful. Anyway,
a big red, letters that say caution on the front page, right?
Yeah, that might be appropriate. That might be appropriate.
It's always amazed me why mutual fund companies, stocks companies that come out with a prospectus that's sometimes 200 and 300 pages long,
my goodness.
And you know that people aren't going to read that, and if they do, they're not going to understand it. there should be some simpler ways that securities could get across to people that your money's at risk. Is basically what it's about.
Right. Well, and we like to help people understand that option to roll that money over doesn't just have to wait till retirement. They can actually, a lot of these plans have the ability to access those funds before they're fully retired.
Well, I was going to ask you that question, as a matter of fact, Lynn, in the fact that do people have to wait until they officially retire with the firm to roll over their 401k or 403b, or can they roll over a part of it while they're still working?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's important that people understand that most plans have what are called in-service withdrawal options from those plans, some of them as early as age 55, and many, more frequently at age 59, 59 and a half, they allow what's called in-service withdrawals. Now, typically, if you do that, you need to make sure that it doesn't impair your ability to continue to contribute and participate in that plan. Yeah. And so it's important, if you're going to make that kind of an election, that you're talking to a professional advisor that can help you understand the plan document, and we always we make phone calls to the HR departments, and we talk to those folks to understand what those provisions are, and so we can help people through a coaching relationship to understand, because they a lot of times don't know the right questions to ask. Yeah. And we're trained, and we try to do that. We try to ask the right questions, and we like to have the client right there with us when we do it. Mm-hmm.
You made a very good point. Make sure you're working with a professional, someone who knows how to handle these kind of transfers, and ask the right questions, because what many consumers and Americans don't know, if you do it improperly, you take receipt of the funds, you put them in the bank somewhere, you effectively are going to have a tax time bomb, because the whole thing is going to become taxable. You have to roll it over in a certain way. Is that correct?
That is correct, and typically that's called a custodian to custodian transfer. Very important that be done properly, because we don't want that tax bomb, as you explained it. We've had clients come in where they had done that, and it's just been sitting in their bank account, and they didn't know that they had that exposure, and that's not the kind of news we like to deliver.
Whew. Boy, that would be that'd be heartbreak, wouldn't it?
It hurts.
Well, people put money in their 401k, their 403b throughout their careers. They build this nice nest egg up. And many consumers don't realize that these kind of accounts, even IRAs, can end up becoming what we call in the industry a tax time bomb, because it's fully taxable to the owner and then the beneficiaries. They leave it behind if they pass away before using up all the money. So big question here now, how do you diffuse the tax time bomb, Lynn? How do you help your clients to reduce or eliminate taxes on all these qualified accounts we're talking about?
Very good. Yeah, that's and this is one of the most favorite things that we do in our practice, and as we educate people via our workshops or just in our one-on-one consultations. The importance of properly naming beneficiaries is just critical, and the custodian of the assets is another critical part. Now back to the beneficiaries. If you properly name beneficiaries on your accounts, then those accounts will pass to those beneficiaries directly, without probate, without other interferences. And it gives your beneficiaries a choice. It gives them the opportunity to have a choice as to how they're going to receive those assets. And when we talk about qualified assets, that's a big deal. Because if you have not properly set up beneficiaries, then frequently we find that the 401k custodian will just send a check to the beneficiary at the passing of that particular employee or retiree. And there the check shows up, and the spouse, or perhaps if it's just children, they go deposit it in the bank, and about 6 months, a year later, when the tax filing is due, they find out, oops. We don't like oops, because that's a big tax problem. And so it's important to set up beneficiaries. It's important that the custodian allow you to name beneficiaries and allow that asset to stay where it is instead of having to be liquidated. And not all custodians allow the asset to stay there. Some of them force liquidation. So that's one issue. The other issue has to do with the children and grandchildren. If we set up what are called stretch or multi-generational options on those assets, we're able to keep the tax man away for a long, long time and stretch out that inheritance, create a legacy over multiple lifetimes, not just your spouse or your children, but also your grandchildren. And that's a big deal. It's so important that you understand how to properly name beneficiaries so that those assets get where you want them to go instead of ending up half of them into Uncle Sam's pocket.
A couple of very important strategies then. Number one, be sure you've got beneficiaries listed, and be sure that wherever that money is, that custodian will allow that money to potentially be stretched and not just send a check and be done with it.
Oh, yeah.
Because if a child gets $50,000, $100,000, $1 million, whatever, that's going to be at the highest tax bracket in most cases, and Uncle Sam's going to get their big chunk.
They will, and the sharks will start circling. Because when they find out that somebody's got assets, people are coming out of the woodwork with ideas and opportunities.
Yeah, yeah. So, don't want to see that to happen to our heirs, that's for sure.
No, we don't.
Now, as far as making sure it's not a tax time bomb for the owner themselves, are there any strategies there while they're alive to reduce taxes of their qualified accounts?
Well, certainly we can make sure that those assets are simply, as we said, transferred to the proper position as far as an IRA. Now, some folks have considered Roth conversions, and that was a big buzzword, especially in 2009 and 2010. And even going forward, it's not a bad idea. Again, everybody's situation is different. And so you need to do an analysis and see if a Roth positioning of those assets to get the tax burden under control. As we like to say, would you rather be taxed on the seed or the harvest? And you know, that seed, that's a much smaller tax burden than the harvest when it becomes a multiple of what it was. And so the idea of a Roth positioning may be an option that should be looked at.
Yeah, great idea. I like that concept. You can visualize that. Do you want to be taxed on the seed or on the harvest? Yeah. And we know that most seeds bring back 100-fold, so it'd be better to be taxed on the seed than the harvest.
Especially if it's a good seed.
That's right. It doesn't die out on you. It multiplies.
That's right.
That's great stuff. Very good information again, Lynn. Thanks for coming back.
You bet. You bet.
Those people who are going to be retiring soon and have a 401k, 403b, or some kind of pension plan will certainly want to work with you and your group in the New Mexico area.
We look forward to that.
Good to have you here again. For even more information about Lynn B. Thurgood and his financial services practice, Oxford Wealth Advisors, or the Central New Mexico Society of Financial Awareness, contact him at 505-891-9800 or visit him on the web at www.oxfordwealthnm.com.